Cush Sovereignty, Black Righteousness by L. James Bolin. Chapter 4 Part 2, History Lesson.
Samuel stood and stretched. You see, son Albert's skin was white, so he was white.
And Anakataz, if they had known he was Irish, they wouldn't have a problem with it. They shot first, then asked questions later, back then. He paused.
It's about DNA and not skin color now. So happens that same DNA they don't like contains that same skin color, black folks, Wakatilians. As I was saying, out of frustration, old Jim moved to Jackson, Mississippi, and Albert stayed here and bought up 99 acres of land, moving into a farm in the middle of Tallulah away from the public's eye, and married Catherine. They had 12 children.
Samuel held up his fingers as he counted.
6 boys, David, Albert Jr., Doyle, Willie, Johnny, and Jimmy, and 6 girls, Thelma, Bertha, Geraldine, Catherine, Mary Sue, and Albertine Bolin. Remember, they didn't have tribes or clans back then, but since they weren't slaves, they brought their last names with them from Ireland. Samuel took a long deep sigh as he leaned back. As years passed, Albert's son, Willie, and Sam Reynolds' daughter, Mary, got married and had 3 children. Willie Jr., there goes another one.
Damn, was there any other names than Will, William, Willis, and Willie back then? Shouted Samuel.
On top of that, Bill is short for William.
He started laughing.
Anyways, they also had a daughter named Annette and a son named Larry. Mary later married and had 3 more daughters with Melvin Harrison,
Melinda, Darlene, and Tammy.
Larry married Deke, and they had Justin. Justin had a Johnny during the race war of 2025.
Cush interrupted, oh, I know this part.
A Johnny had Alenia, Alenia had Namito, Namito had Kisama, Kisama had Bandile, Bandile had Bocomoso.
Samuel smiled as Cush continued. Chaitin had Magi, Magi had Adayan, Adayan had Elun.
Samuel stopped him.
No, not Elun. But Elon.
And Elon had Atu, Atu had Ahanu, Ahanu had Mfo, Mfo had Lubanzi, Lubanzi. Samuel finished the family tree while Cush named off the names with him. Es had Tablita and Tablita had Liberte, whose name was changed by Sabaoth to Wanyenyekevu.
It impressed Samuel how Cush could recite the family tree at his age.
Very good, just to be 10 years old, Samuel told Cush, but those times have been long gone, and it has been over 1,000 years, and Lake Providence hasn't changed that much. Many of the old abandoned plantations are used as libraries and museums now. Plenty of wild animals roam the land, and we still ride on horseback to get around.
Most people here are community farmers. Samuel thought about what he was saying and felt happy.
Yeah, even the creeks, ponds, and lakes haven't been affected much by the Abenians and this new age of technology.
We work together to keep the air and the water clean. He took an even longer pause and sat there just thinking and then said, our ancestor Tablita, whom we take our tribal name from, him and his wife Abia, along with his children, 5 boys, and 6 girls, lived just a quarter of a mile east of that small river we call the Bar in Lake Providence. Tablita was a spiritual man, and Abia, his wife, was a seer. They both taught their children the ways of Sabaoth. Liberte was the youngest, 5 foot, 8.5 inches tall, and weighed roughly 175 pounds. He had a deep love for Sabaoth and loved history. He was thin but a very muscular young man, born in 3019. Liberte was also a poet and loved writing about the different things he saw in his life, but mainly about the injustice of his people and his love for Sabaoth. One night when he was 16 years old, he took a long walk alongside Lake Providence because he couldn't sleep. Sitting down at the lake, he looked across it, looking at the fish jumping, and said, "Fishin'." So he took out a small flashlight and began to write. We as humans are all brothers. Doesn't matter the color, creed, or religion. Do I have to repeat it? We all are brothers. There are many that hate. There are many who dispute who's the greatest. To me, it's not about politics, RNA, DNA, religion, or even color. It's all about the Almighty. And searching for Him is like fishing. Some get up early, about 5 in the morning. Some go around noon. And some go late in the day. It doesn't matter when you go, it's where you go. Or how you fish. Everyone has their style, their method of fishing. But all have to be patient. Just like when you search for the Almighty, many come early, many come late. But once you get there, you receive your reward from the Lord. Those that don't fish, they don't know what they are missing. When you are bored, frustrated, angry, mad, or sad, try fishing for the will, the power, the salvation of the Lord. As Liberte was writing, a messenger appeared before him, unaware that it was the ancient Fariji. The spiritual entity that we Wakatilians believe guides our path. The messenger first came to him as an elderly man. Why is it you can't sleep, young Liberte? Has the spirit of Sabaoth not prepared you for your journey? Liberte was puzzled. What journey do you speak of? I just couldn't sleep and took a walk along the lake until I came across. Hey, how is it you know my name? Liberte asked as he put up his notebook and gathered his thoughts as he stood up. The messenger continued. The spirit of King Solomon is upon you. We have blessed you with Solomon's wisdom, heart, and soul. Like Elijah, Elisha, and countless others, Sabaoth often used one man to get his people to see. You and your descendants after you will use words of wisdom, peace, and the sword to destroy Sabaoth's enemies. Your writings have reached the ears of Sabaoth, and he rejoices in your words. For this reason, you are no longer called Liberte but Wanyenyekevu. The old man transformed into a wolf. Liberte shook his head and rubbed his eye as the man continued to speak. In 3 days, you will see me again in this form, and I will be your guide on a journey. For the next 3 days you shall perform the holy jeûne and bid your family farewell, for they will not see you for 150 seasons. Know this, before you leave the state of Louisiana, you will endure many trials and tribulations to enhance your spiritual man as well as your physical body that will prepare you for your journey. Be not afraid, for Sabaoth will be with you along the way, no physical harm shall befall you. Quickly interrupting, Liberte smiled. How can a man live to be 150 seasons, sir? The ancient Fariji said, you know that with Sabaoth, all things are possible, but it will not be you, but your blood and your spirit that shall return to Sabaoth's people, and his name shall be called Cush. The wolf sat near Liberte looking up to him. With your blood, in seeing, you shall see more, and for hearing, you shall hear more, and with your spirit, you shall control the flesh, see with the eyes of Sabaoth, and teach others to do the same. The wolf transformed back into an old man and smiled. Behold, your wife. An image of a beautiful woman appears in a cloud of smoke. Your spirits are one, and the love you share will be forever. It will be remembered as an example of Sabaoth's happiness between man and woman. Liberte said curiously, wife? Then he hears a voice calling, Liberte. Liberte? Liberte. He heard the voice crying out. Who is that? Liberte asked himself as he turned around. It was his loving mother, Aba. It's past noon, and why in the hell do you have those dirty-ass shoes in my bed? You act as if you ain't got nothing to do today. Now, go fetch the water so I can water my garden. Liberte's father, Tablita, looked at Liberte and shook his head in anger. Liberte stood up confused, trying to brush the mud off his bed with his hands, and grabbed his notepad. He quickly scrambled through the pages and saw the poem Fishin'. He rushes to change his shoes and dashed out the door to get water for his mother's garden, still confused about what had happened. Was it a dream or vision from Sabaoth? Then he reached down to get the water out of the river, and as he reached into the water, an image of the wolf appeared in the water, hearing, in 3 days make haste. He heard the voice of the messenger once again. Jeûne was a ritual performed by the Wakatilians. One would go without food, or fast as you consecrate yourself to the Lord. By doing so, you're building up the spiritual man and lowering or resisting the physical man or your flesh. Flesh refers to your material or fleshy weaknesses and desires. The holy jeûne was more intense than a regular jeûne. You spent the entire time in a room filled with smoke from herds that enabled you to see and hear more. Liberte looked back to make sure the wolf wasn't behind him and said to himself, I must return and prepare myself for the journey. He grabbed the bucket filled with water and ran home, spilling water everywhere along the path. He reached home and ran into the house to his mother and father. Liberte said quickly and fiercely, "I have seen the many faces of the ancient Fariji. I was instructed to perform the holy jinn for the next 3 days, and I shall not see your face again after that. Let us perform the holy jinn together, for I shall need your guidance, and all that you have taught me must be enforced." Upon explaining what happened to him, Tablita's face and spirit changed and answered, "It is so." Liberte read from the Book of Kings, from the ancient Torah, a book the Wakatilians believed contained the words of Sabaoth. After 2 days of training and fasting with his father, he spends 1 day in a holy jinn with his mother and siblings. He knew they would not see one another again. With tears in their eyes, but joy as well, in their heart. For they knew Sabaoth called him to do great works. On the 3rd day, around dusk, the wolf appeared to Liberte. With sadness in his eyes, he bid his family farewell and left on his journey. Wanyenyekevu. Liberte turned around, his father was waving with tears in his eyes. Wanyenyekevu was in shock, for he had told no one of his new name. As he slowly turned back around, his heart was filled with sadness, for he knew he would never see his family again. "Make me proud, my son," said Tablita. With tears in his eyes, Liberte shouted back at his father, "It will be so."